Hi guys, Kaya Kaynak here for you with another episode of my brand new YouTube channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. Yeah, I want to start with a big thank you to everyone. I'm really humbled. I'm just so delighted with the support from the first day. I was not expecting you guys to be as amazing as you were, and you've shown up for me big time. Within the first day, the first video is on 2.9k views. The number of subscribers we've got is already up to 846. That is unbelievable. I was hoping for maybe 50. So, oh god, my maths isn't good. To 16, 17 times that. Let me know in the comments if my maths is off. But a lot more than what I was expecting is what I've got, and I can't thank everyone enough. You guys' support is what's keeping me going on this, and it's an early journey, and I feel like I want to do it to try and help you guys get closer to Arsenal as a football club, and anything I can do to do that and to bring you guys a little bit closer, I will do my utmost. And yeah, thank you so much for everyone who subscribed. Thank you so much to everyone who will subscribe in the future, everyone who's watched that first video, and for all the feedback. So I've been listening to you guys, and I have enacted some changes already. Some of you made note of the clothes dryer in the background of my room. Apologies for that. That is now, well, it's still in my room, but I've changed location. So I've gone from my bedroom. My bed's no longer in the background. I'm now in the sort of, in my house we have like a kitchen, living room. It's all sort of one room, but I'm in that bit, which I feel like it's got a nice bit of classy art behind me. So that's quite nice, and some cool little pots and pans going on there. So yeah, that's, I hope, is a much nicer backdrop this time around. But if you don't like it, let me know. I'll keep trying to switch it up and work on all of that. Another piece of feedback you guys gave me is calling me out on my lack of hot chocolate, and I think that is very fair, and I have addressed that this time around. It's in here in my little Arsenal Highbury Stadium mug. It may be 18 degrees here in the UK with 71% humidity, but traditions have to be respected, and that is the plan for this channel. We are going to try and get as many hot chocolates and hot takes, as I say in the channel bio, going on Arsenal Football Club, which of course is why we're all here. And yeah, okay, that's my ramble over, and let's get into the big news of the day so far from an Arsenal perspective. And yeah, the big story yesterday, I think at least yesterday, was Jurrien Timber, and that move appears to be heading in the right direction. As far as Arsenal are concerned, I was told yesterday evening that the positive talks are continuing. There have obviously been reports in Holland suggesting that a fee has now been verbally agreed, and it's between, I think, 43 and 47, or 43 rising to 47 is what those reports said. So Arsenal have managed to negotiate, relatively down from the £50 million asking price that the Ajax were going for at the start. And I touched on them a bit yesterday, and please do go back and watch yesterday's video. But I wanted to go a little bit more into Jurrien Timber and why I think it's such a good signing for Arsenal. For me, the main thing it offers you is options and versatility. And it was interesting towards those last three games of last season. The last two games, Forest and Wolves. Two very different games, two very different outcomes. Obviously, one very good for Arsenal, one very bad for Arsenal. But in both of those games, Alexander Zinchenko was out. And what did Mikel Arteta try to do? He tried to change things by switching the sort of the dynamics of his system. So he went from, we all know that it's sort of been this thing where Zinchenko's been inverting from the left, and Ben White's been a more traditional fullback getting up and down the flank. And he tried to sort of flip that a little bit on its head. So Thomas Partey was moved to right back and basically stood on the centre circle in the way Zinchenko does when he comes in from the left-hand side. And he tried to create that sort of right-sided the right side is Zinchenko, if you like, with Partey just doing that role and just switching the whole emphasis of the team. And it worked relatively well against Wolves. I think Wolves obviously had a few flip-flops on. I think they were off on the beach, but it worked pretty well. And I think he's clearly thought, well, look, there's something I can do here. This is an option that I want to be able to pursue more often. And Jurrien Timber does, I think, offer Arsenal the chance of doing that. I've seen a few criticisms of him, and I touched on these yesterday, that he's a bit too short, maybe not the best in terms of winning aerial duels, and the stats do bear that out. I think Jaap Stam and Wesley Sneijder have both said something along those lines, where they've sort of said, look, with those balls that come in over the top in England and English football, that's a very common thing. We love our long balls in England, we love our big crosses, and with all that kind of stuff going on, I think that's going to be more of a thing that he has to deal with if he plays centre back. I don't really see him as a centre back right now. I think it's more likely that, let's say, William Saliba, God forbid, gets an injury next season that rules him out for a significant chunk of time. It might be more of a case of Ben White moving central, as we saw him do last season, and then Jurrien Timber coming in at right back, or who knows, maybe Jurrien Timber just being the first choice right back. He's, in terms of possession and all those kind of things, technically very, very gifted. I've spoken to some people in Holland who have told me, look, this guy is, I think the words they used were absolute baller, which I didn't know that translated over there in Holland, but it clearly does. They're very happy with him as a player, and they're very happy for him to make the move on. They're very excited for him to do well at a big European team, and obviously the Ajax Academy are fantastically well known for what they're able to do in terms of training defenders who can play pretty much in any position. And I view this as a little bit similar to, and the comparison I want to make is when Daley Blind joined Man United from Ajax, and I don't really think they fully appreciated how good he was in terms of an option. Obviously, Timber is much quicker, which I think is a really positive thing for Arsenal, because they want to play hard at the pitch. They want to be able to maybe risk being caught on the, well, they don't want to risk being caught on the counter-attack, but one of the risks of that is being caught on the counter-attack, and you need quicker defenders, and that's why William Saliba was so good last season. It's why Gabriel's so important. Zinchenko's got a good turn of pace on him, and it's why Ben White was so important. He's a quick boy as well. And you throw Jurrien Timber in there, who is a quick guy, and suddenly this team is starting to look pretty resilient to the counter-attack. He's decent on 1v1 defending. He can get himself out of trouble. And Daley Blind, when he went to Man U, he offered a bit more versatility. Maybe it's a bit basic to make that comparison in the sense that both going to big teams, but he's maybe not the tallest in the world, but he did a decent job at centre-back, did a good job at left-back, and also played in midfield every now and again. Now, that does mean that Jurrien Timber, I think, can do those things just on the right-hand side. So I think he can play centre-back. I don't think it would be ideal, and I think maybe Ben White or Takahiro Tomiyasu would be in there ahead of him. And obviously, as we reported on Football London, the positive news around Takahiro Tomiyasu is that he's going to be back for pre-season. So it looks like he's going to be ready for the start of the season and to compete. I do, as I said yesterday in the Kieran Tierney chat, think that maybe that's a suggestion that he's going to be more of a left-back, this Timber signing, and then suddenly Arsenal have the number of defenders you'd think they need. They've obviously got left backs, Zinchenko, Tomiyasu, Gabriel and Kivior left-sided centre-backs, White and Saliba right-sided centre-backs, and then sort of White and Timber sort of working as a sort of three, I guess Timber, White and Saliba, three of them all going into those two positions. And maybe if Rob Holding doesn't leave, you've got yourself another important player there, and very exciting youngsters like Raul Walters in the academy who can also play across anywhere along the back four. So the Arsenal defence is shaping up pretty nicely. I think there is obviously a big concern about the defence because that is probably where the title challenge fell down last season, and even before Saliba's injury that was an issue for Arsenal, and they were conceding more goals than you should be conceding if you want to go on and win a Premier League. So Arteta will be aware of that. He'll be wanting to change it, but it does seem as though, especially with the Kai Havertz signing, he's moving towards a more offensive style of play, and with that style of play you need players who are good in transition. Timber is that. He's also excellent in the build-up, and he seems like a very Mikel Arteta type of player. He seems to tick a lot of those boxes, and it's a theme across these Arsenal transfers. It's a theme where almost every deal that gets done, every time, even if it's a name that popped up out of the blue, like a Jakub Kivior did in January or Fabio Vieira did the summer, you can see almost exactly what the purpose is, where the plan is to use them, and how they fit in, and why Mikel Arteta would like them as players. And I think that's really good for Arsenal. I think it's a clear sign that the strategy is joined up. I know Edu and Arteta work really closely when it comes to player recruitment. They've got a really strong relationship. So that's all heading in a positive direction. And Jurrien Timber, I think, is going to be, assuming it does get done, a really positive piece of news for Arsenal, a really positive addition to the back line and potentially to the midfield as well. And it does seem positive talks progressing, obviously those reports in Holland suggesting that it's done, and that seems to be heading in the right direction. So great news for Arsenal, great news for fans of transfers, which I know there are plenty of you out there, especially on YouTube. So another player I want to talk about, and another piece of positive news for Arsenal. It's been a good week for Arsenal. I mean, I don't want to say that I chose this time on purpose, but it feels like a good time to start up a YouTube channel. It feels like a good time for positive things to be talked about, and it's always nice to talk about positive things than it is talking about negative things. And another positive thing for Arsenal was the news that Ethan Nwaneri is going to commit his future to Arsenal. Great piece of news. great piece of news. And I've spoken to lots of coaches in the academy, and the two they pick out are Miles Lewis-Skelly and Ethan Nwaneri. Both of them are 16, or I think Lewis-Skelly might be 17 now. I need to check that. The old, you're 16 until you're 17, you're 15 until you're 16 in Ethan Nwaneri's case, and obviously the youngest player in Premier League history. And it was interesting, Arteta, when that happened, he spoke about sending out a message. And I do think a lot of that was about trying to, obviously the circumstances lined up pretty well. Ødegaard was out injured. Vieira needed to, I guess, come off for the last couple of minutes. Arsenal were 3-0 up, and it all lined up perfectly. And I think Arteta wanted to prove to young talents who are coming through the system that, look, Arsenal is where you're going to get your chances. And I think that is what is drawing a lot of these young talents to Arsenal. And I spoke yesterday about reputation and Arsenal's ability to tie these guys down. And I know that Mikel Arteta and Eddie were both involved in the contract negotiations for Nwaneri, which isn't, the most common thing in the world. He is viewed as a really exciting talent, not just at Arsenal, but across England. And he had plenty of offers. He had teams interested. I think Chelsea and Man City were two of the teams interested that I'd heard about. And I think he had offers from abroad as well. But he's an Arsenal boy. He wanted to stay in North London, Islington, born and bred. And I don't think, the suggestions are that there was never really too much of an intention for him to want to leave. So another piece of positive news for Arsenal. Ethan Nwaneri, I've seen him play a couple of times for the 23s. I'm planning on bringing you guys more coverage of the academy actually going forward next season. And I'm interested to see how he develops. I don't think he'll be heading out on loan. Obviously, famous last words and maybe decisions we made. I think Arsenal will want to keep him. They're very clear on profiles and pathways, and they're very clear on wanting to make sure players don't skip steps and making sure they're physically ready for big steps. And I don't think Ethan Nwaneri is maybe quite ready for first team football just yet. I mean, he's only 16 years old, let's not forget. But I think he's going to probably stay with Arsenal next season, play more regularly for the 23s. They sort of mixed him last season between the 18s and the 23s when he was 15, 16, which in itself is unbelievable. He made his under-18s debut at 14. My favourite stat I saw about Ethan Nwaneri was when we first heard about coronavirus, he was 12 years old. Let that sink in for a second. That is how young this guy is. So bright future ahead of him. And he's been shown the potential pathway into the first team, how that could work. Arsenal have a plan for him in the long term. And Per Mertesacker does a fantastic job in the academy in terms of Arsenal's ability to hold on to youngsters they really, really want. And, last season there was Amari Hutchinson who sadly left. But also, I don't think it's really working out too well for him at Chelsea. But yeah, I think Arsenal have shown they're pretty good at tying down these young players, the talented youngsters who they want to keep hold of. They don't seem to be losing them very often. And that seems to be, again, a trend across the board. I can't really think of a sort of a deal where Arsenal have gone into a contract negotiation recently and not got what they wanted from it. Maybe you guys will be able to tell me something different that I've forgotten, but I think of William Saliba, Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Martinelli, all players that they wanted to tie them down. Flo Balogun, tied them down. Eddie Nketiah, tied them down. All those deals needed to be done, and they're doing them. And that's not easy all the time, and it's a very difficult thing to do, and Arsenal are doing it consistently. So yeah, positive. Another thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is potential further signings beyond the three who seem to be the main focus. And again, obviously, all the usual caveats of Rice and Timber aren't over the line yet, like Havertz is, but the latest on Rice, talks heading positively. They're just, like I said yesterday, ironing out those final fees, the final structuring of the payments, and Arsenal will go back to them today, and I'm sure those talks, it's nearly 2:30 local time, I'm sure those talks will be going on now in terms of just the structuring of the payments and what needs to be done. So yeah, that's getting done. It seems to be heading in the right direction. You never want to jinx things in the transfer market, but that seems to be heading in the right direction, just as Jurrien Timber seems to be heading in the right direction. But I hinted yesterday that I don't think Arsenal will stop there, and that is dependent on exits. And I got quite a good question in yesterday, and please keep sending your questions in. I will answer them as frequently as I can. I really appreciate it. The question came in yesterday from Corey J. Tomlin, and his question was sort of in three parts. Firstly, he said, "Hey Kaya, congratulations and thank you. Congratulations and welcome to YouTube." Thank you, Corey. I really appreciate that. His question was broken down into three parts, like I said, and he said, "What would you do regarding Thomas Partey? Do you think Arsenal should cash in on him and look for a replacement like Alabia and Caicedo? Do you think they should keep him and not bring in another midfielder and go with what they have? Or should they keep him and sign an eventual successor who can learn from Partey in the long run?" So, three options that are there when it comes to Thomas Partey. I think that last one, the whole eventual successor thing, I don't think that works because Jorginho is in the squad. Jorginho has really impressed me since he come in from Chelsea. I have to be honest, I wasn't fully convinced. I thought, given that they were looking at Caicedo and then Jorginho, they pivoted. I thought, well, it's not ideal, but quickly won me over. Has gone from a position of weakness where we were all panicking if something happens to Thomas Partey. Now we're all talking about, well, could we let Thomas Partey go? And Jorginho is a big part of that. And he did an interview in The Standard with Simon Collins saying that he's staying. So Jorginho will be part of the squad next season. Now, that means, as far as I'm concerned, if you bring in a youngster, a successor, like a Lavia or Caicedo, who Corey mentioned then, I don't think you can necessarily have the three of them for one position, especially when you consider Declan Rice is probably going to sometimes play in the 6 as well, because Havertz is being looked at as an 8. Odegaard's not going to be dropped because he's the club captain, so it doesn't quite work for me, the option of having 3 DMs or 6s, potentially 4 if you count Rice as well. It doesn't quite work for me, so I think you're looking at a decision on Partey. Does he leave? And if he does leave, do you bring someone in? Now, obviously, you have to get the right offer in for Thomas Partey. He's a good player. He's got 2 years left in his deal, I think. So, there's value there. Teams in Italy are interested. Teams in Saudi are interested as well, Saudi Arabia. Listen, if you get a good fee for him, I wonder if Arsenal would be inclined to accept it. When that's done, then they can start to look to build for the future. And I think you bring in maybe Lavia. I can't see Caicedo happening with Rice happening at the same time. I just can't see those two happening. I think Caicedo would be near the triple figure mark again, and I just don't see both of them coming in within the same window. I know that in January, I spoke to people at the club who told me, look, ideally by August 31st, we want to have both Rice and Caicedo in the building. But Caicedo since signed a new deal with Brighton. That gives Brighton even more negotiating power. At the time, I think Caicedo only had 2 years left in his Brighton deal. So that's all heading sort of in that direction. Caicedo is a player who said he wants to play Champions League. That would seem to suggest that maybe Arsenal could get that one done. But I think it seems like he's maybe moving more towards Chelsea as things stand. But listen, never say never. All I know is I think the reports that suggested Arsenal pulling out of the Caicedo race were a little bit premature. I'm sure, very well informed, but a little bit premature as far as my information is. Arsenal are still keeping tabs on him, but I have to say at this stage of the window, with Rice looking like it's heading in the right direction for 105 million and Havertz coming in for up to 65 million and Timber coming in for up to 47 million euros, I'd be surprised if Arsenal were able to go in and get Caicedo as well as that, which is why the deal for Romeo Lavia seems to make more sense to me. I know that Arsenal are interested in him, but Arsenal have a knack for surprising us. Lavia is a player who obviously we all know from Southampton, had a good season last season, his first real senior season. Lots to like about him. I think very good on the ball, quite snappy in the tackle, a bit similar to Thomas Partey in a sense. And I think if Partey were to go, Arsenal would need another player in. And as far as I'm concerned, it would make sense to get a younger player in who can eventually be a successor to Partey, but maybe not in the short term. And then you've got Jorginho in there as a more experienced figurehead who is a fantastic leader within the squad. The squad really love him. You speak to people around the dressing room, they all speak so highly of Jorginho. And the reason for that is because he's so good with the younger players. And I think he'd be willing to help this guy, whoever it is, mystery fourth signing, come in and deal with that. And then maybe when Jorginho's contract is up, which it is up at the end of next season, although Arsenal do have the option to extend by a further 12 months, then maybe you look to make a decision on, do we stick with this guy as a potential backup for Declan Rice, or do we start to play him more regularly? And different options for different opponents, which I think is big for Mikel Arteta, and he's spoken about that in the past. He wants different options. You're going into a Champions League squad, you want Arsenal to stay in the Champions League, you need different options, you need different players who can play in different positions. And so I think those would be the big decisions. I got another question in related to the left back area, and this was from Adam Jessup. Adam Jessup 1948. Thank you again for the question, Adam. He said, "Hi Kaya, good work on the channel. Do you think there's any plans for a new left back at all? Do you think there's any plans for a new left back at all, or would one of Tierney, Tavares, or Cedric cover this position?" So I'll go through those one by one. I'll start with Nuno Tavares, and I know that he wants to stay in England. His preference is to stay in England. Marseille can't afford to keep him, so and that's been made very clear. And he, as things stand, is coming back to Arsenal for pre-season when he's done with the under-21 Euros, where he's playing regularly for Portugal, doing quite well for them. But it seems that West Ham are among the teams interested. I think Brighton were linked last summer, or they've since signed Pervis Estupiñán. So yeah, it seems that Tavares is on his way out of Arsenal, and Arsenal can probably demand a decent fee for him. 2 years left on his deal. Young player, did well at the start of his loan in Marseille, tailed off a little bit, but I think there's definitely a talent in there. And if you want to play with a back three, which sometimes West Ham do and teams across the Premier League do, I think Nuno Tavares is a perfect wing back. So yeah, definitely a player in there who can offer something different. Cedric, my information is that he currently is set to stay for another year. The communication to him was that he was wanted back at the Emirates, and he'll have 1 more year left on his deal. I can't see Arsenal sending him out on loan with that in mind. I don't see a contract termination in the offing because it has to be agreed to by all parties. So unless Arsenal make him a really good offer, I can't see that happening. So maybe he sticks around for the season. He's doing his coaching badges, very happy, very settled in London. So yeah, maybe it would make sense to keep him. I wonder if maybe Arsenal would want to get him off the wage bill. But as far as I'm aware, the information that I've got is that they've communicated that they'd like to have him back, and he's expected back for pre-season training next week. Jurrien Timber, again, currently expected back for pre-season training when Arsenal return, which is going to be in the first week of July. He was off with Scotland in the Nations League, Euro qualifying, so he'll be coming back a little bit later. I don't quite know if he'll be back for Adidas HQ when Arsenal head to Nuremberg, but as things stand, at least, I think he'll probably be back for the US tour if something doesn't happen by then. He's another player who's attracted interest in other teams, and as I spoke about yesterday, I think Arsenal could demand a pretty decent fee for him in the current transfer window because they've worked pretty well on his contract. Between 35 to 40 would be what I think would be fair, especially given that he came in for 25. You want to make a decent profit on him. I would be surprised if currently that he stays, just because I think he's a player who is certainly good enough to play regular football. Listen, he's handled it fantastically in terms of maybe not being given opportunities and being overlooked, in my opinion, quite unfairly at times. I spoke earlier about those games where Partey was moved to right back and Kivior went to left back. I do think you could have just played Jurrien Timber. Maybe you're starting to plan for next season, but I think Jurrien Timber deserved those games, given that how professional he's been throughout the season, how well he's handled things. There are lots of players who wouldn't have handled things as well and wouldn't have been so positive around the dressing room, but he did, and he was excellent in the way he did it, and he was always good when he came into the squad. So there's definitely a player in there, and if Arsenal can get a decent fee for him, I think maybe he'll be on his way. But as things stand, no offer has come in. So decisions to be made once that's done. When it comes to the left-back situation, I think Arsenal will probably be fine with Takahiro Tomiyasu and Alex Zinchenko. Obviously, Kivior can play there as well. So you've sort of got three who can do it. Timber played a little bit as a left-back in his youth. I wouldn't be surprised if he could do that again. And, there's plenty of options there who could do that. Lino Sousa is a very talented young player coming through the academy as well if you need him. I don't know if he'll be heading out on loan this season. I need to sort of dig into that a little bit more. But, there are options there at left back if Tierney was to leave, especially with Timber coming in. If Timber does come in, you've got Ben White and Timber competing for that right back spot. That would seem to suggest that Takahiro Tomiyasu is maybe going to be playing more of his football on the left-hand side next season, and where he can do very well. He's done very well in the past for Arsenal, and he can continue to do so. I think we all remember that Liverpool game where he shut down Mo Salah for the most part, didn't really let him have a sniff, and I think Arteta would love to have him in those kind of big games, and he trusts him in those big games. So yeah, Takahiro Tomiyasu, I would say, is more likely to be the backup left-back. So I've been going for about 25 minutes now, so I think I'm going to wrap things up there. Thank you very much for listening or watching. Another piece of your feedback that you guys gave me is that you would like this in podcast form. So I'm going to work out how to do that, and then I'm going to put it in podcast form there for you. Again, a massive thank you. I'm really, I don't want to sound too sort of Oscar acceptance speech, but I'm really humbled by how well this is going so far, and I'd love to keep doing it. It's really enthused me, and it's really excited me in terms of the places that this channel could go. I've got a really good feeling about how things are going to go for the coming season, and I think it's going to be a positive one for us all. And thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for listening or watching. Please do like and subscribe, because it really helps me grow the channel. It really helps sort of get higher up the search bars and all that kind of stuff. And also, one more thing to ask from you guys who have given me so much already, but I am doing an Instagram page as well, Kaya Kaynak FL. FL is in Football London, so Kaya Kaynak FL. I'm on Instagram where I'm posting more and more in sort of conjunction with the work I'm doing on Facebook as well, where it's just Kaya Kaynak Journalist, and I am on Twitter at Kaya Kaynak 97. If you're not already following me there, I'll put all those links in the description of this video, and there'll be timestamps in the description of this video as well. I'll just hit my microphone again because I'm getting too excited about these YouTube videos. I'll be back with another video relatively soon where I'm hoping that I won't hit my mic. Please do keep giving me feedback. Please do let me know what you think you want to see more of, what you want to hear more of, and please give me your questions. I love taking part with your questions. I love seeing what you guys have got to talk about. I love hearing what you guys want answered, and as best I can, I will try to answer them. So thank you so much, guys, for watching, tuning in, listening, whatever it is, wherever you are. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day, and I'll speak to you all very soon. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.